Hi, this is Tasheena.
And this is Jonathan.
And this is We Watch What We Watch, a podcast where a married couple talk about movies and TV.
And today we are talking about two recent releases, Hitman and Inside Out 2. Where are we starting?
I think we should just start from the top. The first one we saw, which was Hitman. Hitman is about Gary Johnson, a full-time professor who works part-time helping the police with sting operations, and he becomes a fake hitman. After a series of successes, Gary hits trouble when he falls for a client, Madison.
This has been getting a lot of buzz.
Yes, it has. So I think it was at one of the major festivals. It got the buzz, and also everybody was talking about how, why is this going to Netflix? Why is this Richard Linklater movie going to Netflix? Oh no, you should see it on the biggest screen you can. And Netflix did do a very brief theatrical run, but unless you were in LA and New York, like for us, it was going to be about an hour 15-minute drive to go see this movie in a theater. And I remember being on the fence. I'm like, oh, should I go see it? Because everybody was like, oh, you should go see it in the movie theater. And let me tell you what.
Yeah, if you had to drive an hour and a half for this movie,
I would have been so fucking pissed.
Okay.
Let's just get that out there. No, we'll get into it. I'm not saying this is a bad movie. I'm not going out there saying, like, I hated this movie. But it is not something you have to see in a theater. There is nothing about the visuals where I'm like, oh man, I really wish I would have seen that on a big screen. This is a lazy Sunday afternoon movie. Yeah.
I agree. After we watched it, my first reaction was that's what all the hype was about.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. It was fun.
Yeah. It was enjoyable.
It was enjoyable, chill time. I feel like this was some sort of undercover marketing campaign meant to push Netflix's stuff, because it's like it's just a movie.
This is gonna sound like a burn, but I wrote down, this is a very good Netflix movie.
Exactly. It feels like a Netflix movie.
I'm like, oh, this is the proper venue for this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it had a wide release and it was just at our local movie theater, then I've been like, probably could have waited at home, but I wouldn't have been upset. It was just the
exclusivity, manufactured scarcity.
Everybody was just like, you have to go see it in the theater. And I'm like, why? There's nothing about it that screams, this is a theater experience. And I love going to the theater. I'm not like a theater hater. Most of the time I have a good experience when I go to see something that was worth seeing on a movie screen.
So let's get into it. I had my info up here, but I've already forgotten his name because I don't remember anyway.
Glen Powell? Yes.
Kind of an interesting choice for this role.
Yes.
Right off the bat, so they try from the beginning to try and dress him up a bit to make him look unattractive, which is virtually impossible.
I'm like, it is Glen Powell.
That is Glen Powell with a bad haircut.
Oh my goodness. I laughed so hard. There is a line about halfway through, because he like slowly goes through this quote unquote transformation. And then like halfway through his movie, he's a professor. So one of the students is like, oh, is it just me or is he getting hot?
And I'm like, get hot. He's always been hot, idiot.
And he's still wearing his glasses. Literally, the only difference was that his hair wasn't like combed down. It was actually styled a bit. But that was like the only difference. It was like a Clark Kent Superman type thing where I'm like, what are you talking about? It's Glen Powell.
Yeah. He had more of a sense of confidence. The way he talked was a little bit different. It wasn't a big enough change. I think if you had cast someone else, I'm trying to think of who.
It wasn't enough of a difference in the beginning for me.
Sometimes hot people are just hot, and there's not much you can do to cover it up.
That is true.
I think he just is too put together.
Yeah.
To come across as anything other than put together. Even when he's trying to, I don't know, I didn't completely buy his pre-transformation self. I think he did a pretty good job for what he was given, which is why
Yeah.
this is a good Netflix movie, because it's like nothing spectacular, but it's not bad either.
This movie was his showcase. This was
Yes.
his reel because I was
Ooh.
double checking this. He co-wrote this with the director.
Oh, that makes more
So,
sense.
yes, there is a series where he is, his whole thing is he's pretending to be a fake hitman. He adjusts what type of hitman he is to the quote unquote client, and each one is very different, very comical. That was actually probably the best
That
one
was the
for me.
highlight of the movie.
I
Was
I
all
I
seeing all
enjoyed
his
that.
little characters, the Patrick Bateman one,
The Patrick Bateman was the
the
best.
I was always excited to see what he was going to do next, and he did a great job at those.
And so, about halfway through, they kinda dropped that, and I was actually kinda bummed. I was like, "Oh, I liked that part."
The core of the
Yeah.
movie is that one of his personalities, Rob,
I think it's Ron.
Ron, is one where he meets Madison. When he meets her character, it's with one of his alter egos, Ron, who's very
Mhm.
suave, very confident, very sure of himself. And
Yes.
they sort of hit it off with that personality. So then throughout the movie, you're seeing him, he's falling for this woman, but it's as Ron.
Mhm.
And there's two things going on, which is one, he feels like she fell in love with Ron, not me, so I have to keep up with Ron. Also, just logistically, that's who she knows me as. But also, he realizes he likes Ron better than himself. And he starts to basically just adopt Ron. Ron starts to overwrite his own. I think by the end, they land on I just took the best parts of Ron and the best parts of Gary
Mhm.
and made them a new person. But basically, he's struggling with this little identity crisis of like, well, I like Ron better than myself, so I'm just going to be Ron.
And if you didn't get that from the story, you sure got that from the psychology class he gave.
Where he
This
just says
is
everything.
one of my biggest pet peeves. Now, usually I'm okay if a movie does one classroom thing where they talk about the themes of the movie in this classroom. They make it a little too obvious, but usually it's just one scene. Here, there's about probably 4 scenes of him talking to his classroom, and every scene is explaining what is going on with him, like his journey. And I'm like, Okay, we got it."
The
I'm
fact
like,
that he wrote it makes this make more sense.
this,
He wanted to give those great
I
monologues. He
know,
wanted
with
to
those great monologues, like this, the ego and the id and transformation and judgment, like every single class reflected his journey in the most obvious way. And I'm like, this is not that deep. This is like Psych 101. I got you. You do not have to spell it out
I
for
guess to
me.
be fair, he was probably teaching Psych 101.
Yeah, no, he was. I've taken Psych
Yeah,
101.
same here.
So they have that framework, which,
It's fine.
but they pair it with internal narration. You can only do one.
Yes.
You can only do one. You cannot do both.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
they really want to make sure. This is why this clicked with general audiences. They really make sure you get it.
I kind of was surprised though that a lot of critics that I like love this movie so much because I felt like it was kind of spoon feeding a lot of stuff. I get explaining some things because you don't want to leave people behind. I get that, but
Mhm.
it was so much.
Now, what did you think of the chemistry between Glen Powell and Adria?
Oh, I have a lot to say about Madison.
Oh, okay. Let's get into that.
Okay. Her character aside, I like the actress a lot, and actually thought their chemistry was really good. That was probably one of the highlights for me that
Yeah.
helped like carry it along.
And nowadays, when we're
Because
seeing so much of an absence of that, it
yeah,
is. It's probably why this was received so well.
yes,
Go on.
I honestly, yes, I believe that's one of the reasons why this is getting a lot of praise because it actually has two people that seem like they like each other. And so I liked that. The character of Madison though was so underwritten. that it drove me crazy. I thought there was going to be a twist somewhere with her because she's so like cagey and underwritten that I thought, oh, it's because it's going to reveal something towards the end about her, and that's why we're not getting the whole picture on certain things. And I'm like, oh no, there's no twist. That's just how she's written.
Yeah, there is only one little reveal as to her motivations, which I don't think is even 100% confirmed, just strongly suggested. But yeah, other than that, there's no
Yes,
other, there's no
but it's
real
not like,
big twist.
yeah, like I'm like, oh, is she playing this guy? Is she not like? I don't know, and I don't know if the script really knows sometimes.
Most of the time, I think she was just horny.
At the end of the day, I think that was it. But it was the way she was written, though. I feel like we got nothing about her internal motives, emotions. It was a lot of surface level. The whole thing is she has a bad relationship with her husband,
Mm-hmm.
and she does leave him. And like the transformation of her character, even at that point, I'm like, whoa, like she's a completely new person.
I
I
think
don't know
that was the first time we started looking at her like, what? Because she's like,
what.
I'm scared. I can't leave him. Therefore, you have to kill him. But then he talks her out of it. Okay. And the very next scene, I left him.
I
It's
left
like, oh,
him.
I thought that wasn't an option.
I'm getting a divorce. I'm like, girl, why was murdering him the first option?
Because
Was
it
it?
really made it sound like from being like, oh, like it's an abusive husband. Like he's controlling. He
I
has
know.
connections. Maybe like she's scared. Like,
Yes.
and that made it so for at first that at least does give him pretty good justification for like, hey, maybe don't do this because versus his other clientele, she's maybe has a good reason and maybe even a good reason
Yes.
to need protection elsewhere, and therefore it's just like, okay, you're not really who we're after. We're not after you, so you should.
Exactly.
And so he sort of
Yeah.
torpedoes it.
I thought this was sleeping with the enemy. Like I thought we were getting that character where a woman has done everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is her last straw. Like I cannot get out. I've done everything I could. You have to murder him. And I was getting sympathetic because even little things she's like, oh, he has me on this diet, or oh, he wants me to dress this way. You know, she gets a lot of hints of like how controlling her husband is. And I almost thought he was gonna be like, and call me like if you need other options, you know, to like
I thought he
get
was
out of
gonna like, I'll be your.
I know, or I know, or do some like
Now,
extraction.
what little reveals we do get about her
Mhm.
character later maybe explain that a little bit. The difference
They
between her on day one versus day two.
yes.
Without getting too much into that. But
I mean, they're definitely a good
it
match.
was
I'll have
still,
to say.
yeah, it was still a bit jarring.
I think we needed to know more about her. There were a couple scenes towards the end where I'm just like, "Oh, we're getting some juice. We're getting somewhere." They have this confrontation where there's like multiple levels going on. Like they know what's going on, but they have to pretend certain things between the two of them. I thought that was actually a very well done scene. I really like that. I'm like, "Oh, I wanted more of this." Because I feel like this movie either needed to be way more funnier, wackier, like really amp up, like him doing personas and stuff. Maybe he runs into two people that know him as two different characters. You know what I mean? Like more of that kind of shenanigans, almost like a 90s throwback.
It almost
But
didn't seem like it knew exactly what it wanted to be, and therefore I was confused how serious I
yes,
should take it. Well, it
yes,
starts out as based on a true story. Like, oh, so this is going to be a more serious start. But then you have some comedic actors right up front. So you're like, oh, this is supposed to be more funny. Or right off the bat,
hmm
the first thing that threw me was almost from the beginning. They're like, okay, we're here ready to stake out. We're going to have someone, a policeman pretending to be a hitman, and we're going to record this person and get them in jail. And right off the bat, it's like, okay, the cop can't do it because he's suspended. Gary, you do it. It's like, wait a minute. So
Go
for
ahead.
clarification here, I thought he was a high school teacher at the beginning. Does he move jobs as time goes on?
I don't know. I
I
thought
think
high school
eventually it
too.
became a college. Anyway,
That's the
he's a
confidence,
teacher
baby.
and he just helps the police with surveillance equipment as a
Yes.
part-time gig. And he's there setting them up for the stakeout. And then they're like, hey, you're going to be our undercover guy. Oh, yeah, and it's really dangerous. Maybe I'm just ignorant on police procedure here, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't work for them and he could just say no. I'm pretty sure he has a lawsuit in the wings here. Maybe I meant to look up the true story of the guy to see if it was anything like this in terms of how he started out, or if he really was an undercover cop. But this guy was just some teacher, and he's just like, "Hey, you do
Yeah.
this." Like, I don't think that's how that works.
Yeah, because the other guy was like, "Oh, he hasn't even done the training yet." I'm like, I feel like,
Training. He's not a cop. He's
yeah,
just a
I feel
dude.
like there's so much here where any of the people that were entrapped could easily be like a lawsuit. There's some moments there in here that are really dark, especially towards the end. Someone's dying, and two people are just making out.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's dark. So they have like a couple moments like that kind of get on the edge of having dark humor. Yeah, I don't. Is it wacky funny or is it darker funny? It kept going back and forth.
I think in the end, the frustration of this movie seeming like it can't pick one side or the other.
Yes.
How Glen Powell is both does a good job, but is almost too good for the role. Leaves it sort of in this muddy middle ground, which I think is why it is so widely popular, because it's broad enough to appeal to everyone. But for me, it's just a little frustrating because I don't think it commits hard enough to any one direction or in its casting to really shine. In my view, the movie is summed up by Glen Powell himself. Just, he's good.
Yeah.
He's charismatic. He did well in the role, but was also inherently just a little bit miscast. But since it's his own project, you can't cast someone else. So it just is what it is. And ends up being just fine.
Yeah, I
It
think
was a fine time,
yes.
but
I got a
nothing
couple
spectacular.
exactly, but I got a couple more bones to pick before we move on.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. I got one more too.
One more.
Rapid fire.
I've seen many movies that make New Orleans look beautiful, and this movie made it look like shit. I mean, you have the bayou, the swamps, the city, and Richard Linklater. I'm like, the cinematography in this was kind of bland. There wasn't
Very
really anything.
Netflix.
Yeah, it wasn't really anything special. I'm like, was it a budget issue? But even if it was a budget, you could still have gotten great shots of the city. I don't know. I was really disappointed, especially seeing other movies and how they've shown that city. I don't know. It was a bummer. Especially Richard Linklater is known to be a great director. And I felt this is a little disappointing. Because I think that was one of the reasons why I was getting hyped because of the director. He did Boyhood, the 12-year-old movie. And he did the Before trilogy, which is really popular. And I like the second movie a lot of that trilogy. All right, I have one more, but I'll let you get your other one before
Oh,
I
I
go.
was gonna say they really have to dance around the fact that he's working for the police and potentially entrapping people, and also trying to address modern attitudes towards the police. And they have this cop who he's replacing, who's in trouble for beating up some teenagers, I guess, and was caught on camera. So he's
Yes.
suspended with pay. So they sort of poke fun at that. So they're trying to, I feel like, have a little bit, have their cake and eat it too. Because they're trying to, like, yes, we understand that police protect their own, and people who get in trouble don't really do anything, but also your main character is working for them, so you have to kind of like this. So they do like the commissioner or DA. I don't know who the boss guy was who they were talking to. I don't know if he was the police chief or commissioner or DA or what. I don't
I'm
know if they
guessing
ever
police
said.
chief. I don't think they said.
Oh, he's credited as Sergeant Hank, so he's a
Oh,
cop.
sergeant. Okay.
So they try and make him like, oh, you're only here because of the police unions, which made me wonder, like, is it really just the police union? They seem like they're trying to separate, oh no, the department's fine, it's the union that's protecting all these bad cops. Like, that seems problematic. Also, I don't know if that's true. Isn't that weird? Like, because this is all set in modern
Yeah.
day, which makes some of this a little more difficult to believe. So I don't know if that played as well as they'd hoped. They were trying really hard to make sure that you were okay with all this and okay with them working for the police, because he was working for the good ones. Very clear from the beginning, here are the bad cops, but these are the good cops.
These are the good cops,
And they always
yes.
talk about,
Oh,
that
very
that
much.
guy's a dick. It's like, I think he's more than a dick. Oh yeah, that cop shot an innocent person. What a dick. It's like, I think it's a little more than that.
No, this
They're
yeah,
riding a very fine line. We're dancing around sort of the better movie that's at the core of this that you could have
yes.
had with maybe a modified script, maybe a slightly different casting. Maybe you could have gotten something, yeah, that was a main character that you weren't supposed to like. But in a Netflix movie with Glen Powell, by having Glen Powell in it, you're supposed to like him.
My last note, I just wrote, "What the fuck was that epilogue?"
Oh, yeah.
I hated the epilogue. It should have been cut. Just it should have stopped exactly where it ended. Cut the epilogue, it would have been fine. Cuz really? This is really the future these two people would have had? These two nutballs?
Yeah, it definitely didn't leave enough for the imagination.
Just a ho-hum life, doing your 9 to 5.
But that tracks with the rest of the movie. They're already telling you exactly what everyone's thinking. Why not tell you exactly what happens after?
I'm just like, no. No, no, no. Should have just cut that. I was just steaming the whole time going, "This is dumb."
All right, so final question. Would you recommend this movie?
Like I said, good Sunday afternoon chill movie. Grab your popcorn.
Yeah.
The two of them have great chemistry. They're both great actors. It was a fun time with both of them. I just wish it was a better script for them with more developed characters. Like you said, there is a better movie at the core of this.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
agree. If you just want something to have on, it's fine.
Yeah.
We're probably being too hard on it
Oh,
for
yes.
the just because of how hyped it was, but it's fine, and it's nothing more than that. All right, moving on.
Okay.
Second movie, Inside Out 2. Saw this with our daughter this past weekend on Father's Day.
We are back with Riley. She's a teen now, and our core emotions have to adjust to a new gang: anxiety, envy, embarrassment, and ennui. Both groups clash as they decide who will lead Riley in this new phase of life. So we're back again, 9 years.
Yeah, and we just rewatched the original,
Mm-hmm.
which still
Of
made me
course, right?
sob. For the first time I saw it, I cried because of Bing Bong.
Yep.
And the second time I saw it, I still cried because of Bing Bong. And also now cried at almost every interaction with the daughter because of how much she reminds me of ours.
Yes, our daughter is similar age bracket to the first movie. This time really got to me, especially towards the end when Riley tells him, "I'm sorry, I can't just be your happy girl because I'm sad about this." She feels like her parents are pressuring her to just be the joyful kid. And that's why sadness has been repressed, because she feels like she has to for her parents, that she can't show these real emotions that she has. And that really got to me. I never want our daughter to feel like that. Like she has to hide stuff from us and how she really feels, especially something huge like a move that they went in
Yeah.
the first movie. That is a major change.
So going into this one, the bar to meet was pretty high. Do you feel like it met that bar?
I don't know if that's fair. I had a different experience with this movie than I did the first one,
Definitely.
because when I first saw it, it didn't hit me as hard as the first one, except for one thing at the end. I'm kind of glad we did record this a couple of days later from watching this, because as I've been thinking about it and letting it settle, it actually really did get to me. It's just been more of a slow burn than the first movie, which is just like emotional gut wrench, like up front. And this one, I don't know, more and more I've been thinking about it, I've been liking it more as I've been thinking about it. So I think when I first got out of the theater, I would have said, "Oh, I really liked it, but I don't know if it meets the first one." Where now I'd probably say that it is definitely a worthy sequel.
And I think that's the important clarification. It's a worthy sequel. It's never going to replace the first one or surpass it, or it's apples and oranges. It is just they are
Mhm.
companion pieces in analyzing very different parts of her life. And I think just like the character is more complex and dealing more complex issues, the movie is more complex, which makes it
Yes.
harder to hit you as directly as the first one did, as fast, because it takes more processing, just like her emotions do. So it's very much in keeping with the theme of the movie that it takes a little more to
Yes.
process. I agree that when I was in the theater watching it, yeah, it took a long time to click. Because of the material, it has a lot of frustrating character interactions. I mean, you're dealing with anxiety, envy, embarrassment. These are all the things that if you don't like feeling in a movie. So, which is
Yes.
very interesting. You're watching a movie that is about uncomfortable things, and they did almost such a good job portraying it that it was uncomfortable to watch. I think I was uncomfortable at multiple points. Sometimes it starts to feel like it's falling into some writing tropes of awkward teen interactions that are just trying to get a reaction out of you. But that's also the point of the movie, is it's making these things a little hyperbolic so you get it. It's dealing with literal personified emotions, so it has to be big. And it's a kids' movie, so it has to make sure that they're hitting them with that message as well. So you can
Yes.
sort of forgive it for that, but I still couldn't help but feeling anxious myself, which made it a little less of an enjoyable experience while I was watching it. I don't know if you felt the same way.
No, I totally got that as well. You're right, because these emotions are more difficult and near and dear to my heart. The portrayal of anxiety in this movie was so well done. Sometimes it can be really hard to explain how it feels, especially having an anxiety attack. And the portrayal in this movie, I just couldn't believe how close they got to how it feels like in my body when an anxiety attack is happening. But we should probably backtrack a bit. So, mainly, this movie is about Riley and her core beliefs. And those core beliefs flow up to create your sense of self. And that is the fight between these two groups is what does Riley think about herself and who is driving that knowledge? So when this new group comes in, anxiety is pretty much the head of this new group. And she's like, hey, Joy, you've done a great job so far, but I'm taking the reins because Riley's entering a new stage of life. She has more complex feelings. And I, as anxiety, can look into the future and see everything bad that can happen. I can help steer her around those obstacles. So I'm better fit to take control. And that's where the main clash comes. And she even has a little camera that shows like everything that could go wrong. And some of it is, of course, silly. But when you have anxiety, that's very real. There are so many situations where there's only like a 0.01% chance of happening, but it enters your mind and you're like, oh, I have to do everything to make sure that situation never happens, even though the likelihood of that happening is so slim. And there was one moment where you see where they go back to her imagination from the first movie and you see what anxiety has done to her imagination. That got to me
Mm-hmm.
deeply. And that's what happens to you. I had a very vivid imagination when I was a kid, and it also turned against me when I became a teenager. So it all maybe that's why I was having a hard time because as I was watching this and processing all this, I'm like, oh, these are so many things that happened to me when I entered my teen years. And so I don't know how much you want to talk about the ending.
Well, first, from a movie perspective, I thought they did a really good job when anxiety comes in with her making her case. You actually kind of
Oh,
see
yeah.
anxiety's point of view.
I'm
And you're like, yeah, Joy,
protecting
you're
her.
not taking this seriously enough.
Yeah.
You need anxiety to help temper your
Hmm.
unbounded optimism and frivolity. It was almost making it made so much of a case. You're just like, yeah, I agree with everything anxiety is saying. And so they did a great job. It always starts from a place of reason
Yes.
where you feel like
Hmm.
you need to be thinking in this way. And it did a great job showing the descent into madness. And over the course of the movie, anxiety gets more and more unhinged. The fears get more and more troublesome. And the consequences start manifesting in ways that even anxiety does not expect. And I thought they did a
Yes.
great job balancing those two things. It's weird having emotion be a character, but anxiety is kind of a tragic character. You know,
Yeah.
she isn't just the bad guy. She's anxiety. She's caught up in her own self and can't be anything other than that. And it really goes to show how letting your anxiety take control of you, where that can lead, and how much of a slippery slope that is. So I
Yeah.
thought they did a fantastic job with the progression of events and the characterization there.
Yeah, the buildup was really good and so realistic. And the fact that, the other three emotions that are with her are all emotions that are like feeding into her fears, the core of that anxiety. It just builds and builds and builds, and nothing is going like they think it should because it never does. And so it just gets worse and worse and worse. Oh, poor Riley. I feel bad for this kid.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for this kid.
Spoilers going forward here. So by the end of the movie, anxiety has complete control and she's spiraling.
Oh,
And the more and
yes.
more she tries to control events, the more out of control they get. And it leads to basically a panic attack.
Hmm.
And the visual representation, I'm with you. This is where the movie really hit me. Until this point, I was, kind of almost too uncomfortable to really get attached because of how good, which is a good thing because it is about anxiety. But
Yes.
it was at this moment that it really hit and really connected. I don't usually like to show what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I can be closed off. And until recently, I didn't even know that I had any kind of anxiety. I always felt like I was the cool one, the chill one. I didn't have problems because I was surrounded by people who I felt like had more legitimate issues to deal with in their lives than I did. So it felt selfish to even focus on those things.
Yeah.
So you just go on.
Yeah. It was very difficult watching that scene. And I feel like there's a lot of adults who are going to have a really hard time. Warning, bring tissues. You might need them.
Yeah. So in that moment when anxiety has just gone into full blown panic,
Yes.
and I have felt this before and I never knew how to describe it. And it was so perfectly done to the point that it's like, wow, but this person gets it. Whoever did these visuals, forget the writing direction, like whoever did these visuals, they got it. This sense of you're going so fast that you're standing still, that you're processing so much that it becomes overwhelming and all you can do is sit there and stare. Wow.
Yep.
When she kicking up the storm and she breaks through and it's like the eye of the storm. And she like that hit me like a ton of bricks. It was so relatable. I've been in that exact situation. That's when everything connected. The whole movie leads to that moment effectively.
Hmm.
A very powerful moment. And I think overall for the movie, if I were to sum it up as a comparison to the first and the second, the first probably had more moments that hit earlier
Hmm.
and were more balanced, still leading up to a great ending culmination. This one was a little more back heavy, where it's a little more building up to that release at the end.
Yeah. And I've had my anxiety attacks. It feels like I am in a spiral and I can't get out. And that's literally what I saw on the screen as a visual representation of that.
And you
For
noticed
that,
something with
oh, yes.
that I didn't
So,
realize.
because I've been to therapy, they teach you ways to either pretty much get off the ramp before you get into the attack, and also techniques you can use while you're in the anxiety attack. One of the good things to center yourself is it's called the five senses, and it's like, five things I can see, what's four things I can hear, three things I could touch. You go down the list. And it was interesting because when we're watching this, and as she's getting out of this attack, I noticed she's touching the backboard behind her. She's hearing the birds. There's a couple moments, not a lot, but I'm wondering if somebody was kind of showing a little bit of this technique. No one had to tell her to do this. She is just kind of like finding her own way to get out of this, showing just a way to kids like how you can get out of these attacks. Because, for smaller kids, a lot of this probably went
Right.
right over their
Over their
head.
heads.
So this is probably a little bit more for older kids, young teens would probably get the most out of this, but young kids will love it too. I mean,
Oh,
there's
yeah, there's
still
plenty
enough
of funny
visual,
characters, funny moments, funny gags,
yes.
colorful people. Like, yeah, it's definitely in all ages, which Pixar is always great at.
hmm The older you get, though, the more you're going to appreciate
Yeah,
this. And I think even our daughter, probably in a couple years, when she rewatches this, she will probably understand more and get more out of it.
absolutely.
But she did give it 2 thumbs up. She really
Yeah.
liked it. Is there any other moments that you liked?
There's a lot. I mean, it all gets overshadowed by the core story, but there's lots of funny little gags. There's
One
some
sequence I wanna talk about, the vault scene.
yes, there's some interesting blends of animation styles, and yeah, they go to the vault. They have some repressed memories, and one of them's a cartoon character, so they show them like in 2D as they interact with the screen like a preschool show, which was great.
And he even talks to the audience like it's a, Blue's Clues or Dora the Explorer type and has a pouchy, and it's great. Loved it.
They have a Final Fantasy video game character, Street Fighter or something, I don't know. That's animated just like you'd expect. That was hilarious. So I think that definitely the visual effects department really knocked it out of the park.
Oh,
Overall,
yeah.
like the look of everything was just so good. You could definitely tell it was, like a decade. They've really stepped it up, pulled out all the stops.
I was just worried with it being a sequel. I'm like, "Oh, no."
I think Pixar takes their sequels pretty seriously.
I hope Pixar does more movies like this one, like Turning Red, where it gets a little bit more in depth. Because I wish I had this movie when I was younger, when I was first getting anxiety. I don't know. I think I wonder if it would have helped to know a little bit more what was going on with me.
Yeah.
So I'm very thankful for that reason.
Any other final thoughts on Inside Out 2? Besides, go see it.
Yeah, I think we're both in the boat of highly recommend,
Absolutely.
especially for kids.
It is worth it. I definitely will say, like, just because I experienced the same uncomfortableness, I know there are people out there possibly listening right now who get uncomfortable watching these sort of awkward interactions play out
Yeah.
on screen. They don't like it. It makes them frustrated. Just understand. One, it pays off. Two, it's for kids. It's supposed to be a little hyperbolic. And three, which just compounds it, it's about the emotions themselves. So it has to be double hyperbolic because you have to see their motivations. So you just got to keep that in mind while you're watching it, not get too frustrated. It'll be worth it.
Yeah, overall, I really love the movie. We didn't go into it, but I definitely had some minor issues and quibbles, but nothing that really stands up against how everything came together for me. I think you definitely want to end strong.
Yeah.
You always want to leave them on a good note. And honestly, if you've watched any kid movies, you know that it is a big gamble
Yes.
seeing kids movies that are well done and interesting. And I hate the defense of, oh, it's just a kid movie. I'm like,
Not an
so
excuse.
kids deserve good things too. They don't deserve crap.
Would you rather see this or Garfield?
I'm so glad our daughter had no interest in seeing Garfield.
No interest at all in Garfield. All right.
Yeah.
What's coming up next for us? Do we know?
We're now going into every other week for the rest of the summer. And in 2 weeks, we will have A Quiet Place, Day 1, and Maxine.
It's going to be a Tasheena double feature because I'm not going to see either of these. So
I'm going to have to drink a lot of water and tea before we get on
we're
because
going to get all of Tasheena's thoughts. I will try and moderate.
I don't think I'll be able to convince Jonathan to watch any of the movies. So he will be going in fresh.
I'm excited to play the role of your listener.
Okay. All right, everyone, have a great day. See you
Support
next
your local
time.
theater.
Bye.
Bye.